Rising in the desert south of Cairo, the Red Pyramid of Dahshur is the largest pyramid at the Dahshur necropolis and the third largest Egyptian pyramid overall, after the Great Pyramid of Khufu and Khafre's Pyramid at Giza. Its modern nickname comes from the weathered red limestone core that is visible today, although originally this monument was sheathed in brilliant white casing stones that have since been removed, exposing the reddish core beneath. The Red Pyramid stands 105 meters tall with a base about 220 meters wide on each side, giving it a notably squat appearance due to its relatively shallow slope angle of 43 degrees. This slope is much gentler than the angles of earlier pyramids, hence the Red Pyramid's profile looks low and broad compared to pyramids of comparable base size. The choice of this shallower angle was deliberate. It matches the bent pyramid's upper section inclination and was likely aimed at ensuring greater structural stability. As a result, although the Red Pyramid is slightly shorter in height than the Giza pyramids, its base is extraordinarily large, nearly rivaling the Great Pyramid's base, and it contains roughly 1.7 million cubic meters of stone, an immense volume that underscores the ambitious scale of this project. The pyramid's core structure was built primarily of local limestone blocks quarried at Dahshur, which have a high iron content that gives them a natural reddish tint once exposed. This reddish core was never meant to be seen in antiquity. It was entirely encased in fine white Tura limestone from across the Nile, so in ancient time the pyramid would have appeared white or light-colored, not red. During the Middle Ages, much of that valuable white casing was pried off for reuse in building projects in Cairo, revealing the red-hued stone beneath. Only a few fragments of the smooth casing remain in place at the base, but based on those, archaeologists know the outer surface was beautifully angled and polished. The pyramid is also aligned very closely with the cardinal directions. Its sides face true north, south, east, and west, which was typical for Egyptian pyramids and required careful surveying. The interior layout of the Red Pyramid is simpler in plan than those of some later pyramids, yet it was an ingenious design for its time. The single entrance lies high on the pyramid's north face, about 28 meters above ground level. From the entrance, a cramped descending passage leads down at a 27-degree angle, burrowing deep into the core of the pyramid. This passage is roughly 1 meter high and almost 1.5 meters wide, just large enough for a person to crouch through, and it extends for about 62 meters in length into the structure. At the end of the steep descent, the passage levels out, opening onto a short, horizontal corridor that leads into the first interior chamber. The first chamber is rectangular in plan and notable for its high corbelled ceiling, which rises about 12 meters above the floor. The corbelled roof is constructed by layering stones so that each higher course projects inward slightly from the one below, narrowing the gap as they ascend. The walls and floor of this chamber were finely finished, yet they bear no inscriptions or adornment. In fact, the entire interior of the Red Pyramid is starkly plain, with no hieroglyphic text or decorative reliefs on the stone. At the south end of the first chamber, there is an opening that leads to the second chamber. The second chamber itself is very similar to the first in size and construction. It lies directly beneath the apex of the pyramid. Unlike the first two chambers, which align lengthwise north-south, the third chamber's long dimension runs east-west. It is also the tallest of the three, with a corbelled ceiling soaring about 15 meters overhead. However, the condition of this chamber is markedly different. The floor here is rough, uneven, and sunk lower than the threshold of the entrance passage. Whereas the first two chambers had level stone floors, the third chamber's floor looks as if a massive pit has been dug into it, and indeed it has. The walls and ceiling are blackened with soot, and there are deep gouges and holes in the lower walls and ground. These are telltale signs of tomb robbers or intruders who broke into the chamber long ago. It appears they dug up the floor, perhaps searching for hidden treasure or a lowered sarcophagus. For centuries after its completion, the Red Pyramid was not frequently entered, as evidenced by the presence of bats and the undisturbed stale air that awaited modern explorers. In fact, local villagers long ago nicknamed it the Bat Pyramid, due to the countless bats roosting in its dark chambers. When 19th century adventurers and Egyptologists finally breached its sealed entrance, they were greeted with an overpowering ammonia odor, the byproduct of ages of bat guano and lack of ventilation. The stench was noted to be almost unbearable and made extended exploration difficult without fresh air. Despite the Red Pyramid's successful construction and impressive interior, it holds many mysteries. Chief among them is that no mummy or definitive funerary treasure was ever found inside. Sneferu's remains are absent, and the chambers were empty of sarcophagi or inscriptions when examined, leaving scholars uncertain whether Sneferu was actually buried here. The lack of any inscriptions or pyramid texts on the chamber walls adds to the enigma. The peculiar features and unanswered questions of the Red Pyramid's interior have given rise to a number of alternative theories about its true purpose. While mainstream Egyptology maintains that this pyramid was a tomb, some researchers have suggested it might have had an entirely different function. One elaborate theory posits that the Red Pyramid was not a tomb at all, but a giant chemical reactor or industrial facility, essentially a huge limestone kiln used in a process to produce chemicals like ammonia or niter. Proponents of this idea point to the strong ammonia smell, which they argue is not fully explained by bat guano alone. The blackened, heat-scarred chamber stones, and the perfectly cone-shaped excavation in the floor as evidence of some ancient industrial operation rather than mere tomb robbers. They hypothesize that fires may have been deliberately set inside the chamber to heat limestone and produce chemical reactions. For example, as part of the Solvay process to create sodium carbonate, which involves ammonia. In this view, the so-called burial chamber might actually have been designed as a combustion chamber or a vat. Such theorists also question why Sneferu would build three massive pyramids, Mitam, Bent, and Red, in one reign if they were just tombs, implying perhaps these structures had state-driven practical purposes beyond funerary needs. Long before recorded history, there were advanced ancient civilizations capable of building gigantic megalithic structures we can't build today. Lifting enormous stone blocks weighing thousands of tons and stacking them with laser-like precision. Blocks we still struggle to lift even with our modern cranes. They crafted mathematically precise, flawless monuments from the hardest stone on Earth, leaving us to wonder who these builders were and how they accomplished the impossible. Were they merely primitive societies, or were they masters of a forgotten technology lost to the sands of time? Uncover the evidence of an ancient, global, and technologically sophisticated civilization that once ruled over our planet, constructing gigantic sites the ruins of which are still standing, before a cataclysmic event erased it from memory. Access our ebook, Prehistoric Megastructures, a nearly 500-page volume packed with images and in-depth analysis of some of the most astonishing and unexplained ancient structures ever discovered, monuments that were clearly built with advanced technology from a time long forgotten. There's a limited discount on the ebook, so make sure to get yours before it's too late.